On Thursday, December 20th, the final film in the Star Wars saga will hit theaters. Star Wars Rise of the Skywalker will be the last film in the final trilogy, completing the 9-film series. But unlike the other brands in the Disney bank like Pixar or Marvel, Star Wars seems to be at a bit of a crossroads. Disney has managed to try and ramp up the Lucasfilm production pipeline to match the other juggernaut brands under its watch. Pixar, before it was acquired, used to release their movies much more sporadically, but now we typically get at least one new release a year, and sometimes even 2 a year. Marvel managed to produce a new film each year, but after 2010, they've been ramping up their slate, going from just 1 movie a year to 2, and now we're living in an era where we see 3 Marvel movies released every year, and audiences still haven't grown tired of it. But after 4 years of back-to-back Star Wars releases, the public just seems to be kind of done with Star Wars. Even the cast and crew have begun to publicly denounce the previous film.
What would it take to get you to come back to do Finn again?
In what?
I mean, I don't know if Finn is...
You ain't gonna Disney Plus me.
Throwing The Last Jedi under the bus, but amidst the cultural battleground of politics that Star Wars has become, I think we've sort of lost sight of why anyone liked it in the first place. So as we sit at the dawn of the end of an era, on the burgeoning cusp of a new one right around the corner, I think now is as good a time as any to look back and reflect upon what is the appeal of Star Wars. Why do people love it so much in the first place? And if we can answer this riddle, perhaps we might have a chance of unlocking a way forward for the franchise so it can, to use a quote from another famous sci-fi series, live long and prosper.
You gotta love to be gone back yet. Love turns into nothing, don't you grab it.
So to understand Star Wars, we need to understand why Disney needed Star Wars in the first place. So let's go back to the early 2010s and take a look at why Disney spent $4 billion on it in the first place. Disney's always been a juggernaut, but one thing they've always been lacking in their portfolio is stuff designed to appeal towards boys. Of course, all of their animated films were designed to appeal to children of all ages and genders, but the emphasis on Disney princesses led to a bit of a weakness on the boys' action front. It was never their specialty. Disney was wholesome and family-friendly, while in the 90s, other networks would have superhero shows and imported anime like DBZ, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Batman the Animated Series, and X-Men. Disney's material generally leaned a bit softer with the new adventures of Winnie the Pooh, DuckTales, Goof Troop, and Recess. And of course, the superhero parody Darkwing Duck. Stuff that kind of felt like it was designed for kids whose tastes skewed a bit younger. I think this old promo for Disney's One Saturday Morning says it all.
Illuminating television.
Especially when compared to the darker, slightly more mature fare like X-Men, which would routinely feature post-apocalyptic alternate timelines and metaphorical groups designed to represent real-life hate groups like the Nazis or the KKK, plus all the lasers, bloodless punching you could ask for. Sure, there was occasionally the outlier like gargoyles, but generally the Disney brand would always be about magic and niceness, and while they would occasionally dabble in the rough and tumble world of boys' entertainment, they never went all the way. But in the early 2000s, with the rise of fantasy and sci-fi and more acceptance of superheroes in cinema, as genre stuff began to become more commonplace, this represented a huge weakness in their portfolio. Simply put, Disney could no longer afford to not be in the punching and kicking business, especially when so many superhero properties were being turned into huge tentpole movies like Spider-Man and The Dark Knight. So Disney attempted to try and create new franchises that would appeal to the boy-centric nerdosphere. Remember Tron Legacy? Back in 2010, Disney invested considerable money in trying to revive the dead and dormant Tron brand by creating a sequel to the beloved cult film. They went all in on Tron. That was going to be their ticket to the boys' table. Sure, they had recently bought Marvel in 2019, but they didn't know what it was going to grow into. At that point, it was still a huge risk with the Avengers being 2 years away, and Thor and Captain America were unproven C-list characters. And you know what? Screw those Marvel superheroes. Tron was something they'd had for years, and goddammit, they were going to use that street cred and nostalgia and turn it into the next big thing. Disney went all in. They had a big alternate reality game that would coincide with several real-world events leading up towards San Diego Comic-Con. They had a spin-off animated TV series that would bridge the gap between the new and old movie called Tron Uprising. They had a pretty great soundtrack from Daft Punk that was actually still pretty good. This was going to be the next big thing until it wasn't. Tron Legacy disappointed at the box office. It didn't catch on, it underperformed, and got middling reviews at best. The truth was, nobody really cared about Tron outside of its very niche audience, and the new film was too convoluted and not interesting enough to get a new generation to care much either. At that point, Disney kind of gave up on trying to create a boy-centric action franchises in-house. Why do the hard work when you can just buy out someone else who's already done the heavy lifting for several decades? And so, after the financial implosion of their huge Tron push, Disney was like, screw it, George says he's retiring, let's just buy Star Wars. And so they did for $4 billion in an effort to forge it into a super brand that could stand alongside their Marvel juggernaut. But the people who now owned Star Wars and controlled it didn't really seem to understand why it even worked in the first place. In making Star Wars, George Lucas wanted to recreate his love of the 1940s serials he'd watched when he was a boy, while also synthesizing all the genre films he'd grown up loving, like westerns, war movies, and the works of famed Japanese director Akira Kurosawa. In Kirby Ferguson's excellent video documentary series, Everything is a Remix, he dives into all the different components George Lucas used to create Star Wars to make the ultimate boys' adventure series. I highly recommend checking out his full video, and if you'd like, I have a link to it in the description below after you're done watching this. But here are a few excerpts to give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
Star Wars plays much like an updated version of Flash Gordon, right down to the soft wipes and the opening titles design. From Kurosawa, we get masters of spiritual martial arts, a low-ranking bickering duo, more soft wipes, a beneath the floorboards hideaway, and a boastful baddie getting his arm chopped off. War films and westerns were also huge sources for Star Wars. The scene where Luke discovers his slaughtered family resembles this scene from The Searchers. And the scene where Han Solo shoots Greedo resembles this scene from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The climactic airstrikes in the Dam Busters, 633 Squadron, and the bridges at Toko Ri play very similarly to the run on the Death Star. And in many cases, existing shots were even used as templates for Star Wars special effects.
I got him! Great kid! Don't get cocky!
But that's the genius of Star Wars. George Lucas synthesized everything he loved to create something new that felt unique and timeless, but also served as the ultimate serialized adventure story for boys. That's the biggest flaw in the new approach that's been taken with all the newer Disney films. Rather than synthesizing new genre elements to evolve and expand and create new stories and explore the universe, most of the Disney Star Wars is just an unholy Ouroboros where the only thing that Star Wars references is itself in a never-ending self-consuming cycle. And when you're not building new iconography, then you're just stagnating, and then there's the pink elephant in the room. And that pink elephant's name is Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen was a super producer who worked alongside George Lucas and Steven Spielberg on some of the most successful films of all time, and in the purchase of Lucasfilm by Disney, she was promoted to become president of Lucasfilms and thus began her quest to remold Star Wars into something it was never designed to be. She sought to make the universe more inclusive with better representation and also appeal towards a demographic that largely seemed to ignore Star Wars: girls. Not to say that there aren't girls who like Star Wars or really hardcore female Star Wars fans, but predominantly Star Wars tends to appeal towards guys because, as I've stated before, it's designed to be the ultimate boys' adventure story. Doesn't mean anyone can't enjoy it for what it is, but boy shit is just hardwired into its DNA with the blasters and the spaceships and the laser swords. There's a famous photo of Kathleen Kennedy wearing her Forces Female shirt, and one of the big things in her stewardship of the larger brand was to create something more inclusive towards women who'd find Star Wars more appealing. Of course, this largely didn't seem to apply towards the behind-the-scenes talent, since all of the recent movies are all featured white men serving as the writers and directors, but at least the superficial direction was to show that the Force is female, with characters like Rey, Rose Tico, Admiral Holdo, and Jyn Erso, who could stand alongside the rest of the Disney princesses. Now we get into an interesting crossroads. Can I critique Disney Star Wars without being dismissed as an alt-right Nazi or an SJW cuck? Is there any way to bring balance to the criticism? One thing I've noticed is that I've been very successful at pissing off both ends of the political spectrum, so maybe that's the only way to bring balance to the Force. So, here we go. So of course, just because Star Wars is built as the ultimate boys' adventure story doesn't mean you can't have strong female characters. Princess Leia is of course an icon, and I'd say that the character arc that Dave Filoni has managed to achieve with Ahsoka Tano over the course of his Star Wars cartoons is something that the fanbase has largely embraced, as she's grown from an insufferable youngling into a badass gray Jedi, able to fight toe-to-toe against her former mentor, Darth Vader, and become a linchpin in the Rebel Alliance. You can have good and even great female characters, but they have to be in service of a larger story, not something that stops the story mid-track to give a proselytizing lesson in white guilt gender politics. I think the best example of this is, of course, Rian Johnson's Poe storyline during The Last Jedi, where he attempts to cut Poe down to size by showing him the era of his toxic masculinity and pointless heroics that only managed to get people killed. If only he'd learned to be less impulsive and respect women better, and not do bad war things in a series called Star Wars, could the Resistance have been saved? This is a bad look to have in a 40-minute plot thread that's basically designed to tell you the whole reason you came to see the movie in the first place, with the action and the adventure is stupid and toxic. And it's funny how by the books all the other Disney Star Wars movies have been, but in the main series they let a journeyman director go Rogue One and do whatever he wanted because I guess it went along with the ethos of the Force's female t-shirts. Eventually we'll get a big tell-all book detailing all the behind the scenes of this fiasco, but until that point I'm just going to assume that's the case. Not that you can't have your woke politics in your entertainment. Rian Johnson's Knives Out is filled with patriarchy-smashing woke politics featuring a great takedown of all those awful selfish white people and their privilege, but Knives Out works a lot better because it's built from the ground up to support that worldview and themes and has it baked in its narrative. The main series Star Wars films do not. When you go against what something wants to be, all you're going to do is alienate your main audience. When people are coming to Star Wars for the latest installment of their $200 million boy serial adventure, it's not a great look to spend an hour and a half telling them that boys' adventure stories and war is bad. Every successful movie or TV series has a core identity that's written into its creative DNA. You can push it, you can pull it, but if you break it, then you break the thing at large. A great example of this is an interesting little controversy from earlier this year with Mortal Kombat 11. The controversy came from NetherRealm Studios redesigning their female characters to be more realistically proportioned. Now this might seem like a non-issue, and it mostly is a non-issue, but the ridiculous female character designs were kind of part of the grindhouse exploitation B-movie vibe of Mortal Kombat as a whole. And I was amazed to see two radically different YouTube personalities come to the same conclusion. The ultra-liberal woke movie Bob and my blood is as red as my MAGA hat Razor Fist. These two have nothing in common and would never agree on anything in the realm of politics or pop culture. But I was amazed to see these two, who could not be more polar opposites, both agree about the boobs in Mortal Kombat.
And as part of that, they're taking a new approach when it comes to the body shape and costuming for their female fighters, with art director Steve Baran telling Polygon back in March, "We don't have bathing suit fighters, and I think that's fine."
You know what? I think video game franchises ripe for re-exploitation at the hands of Vladimir Lenin and the Ninth Problem Glasses Brigade. I know the first name that leaps to my mind is Mortal fucking Kombat, the series that birthed Baraka, a knife-armed archdemon with a fatality where he carves abroad from cranium to cunt, where the women dress like the Kiss Army put out a swimsuit calendar, and the thoroughly white developers literally made up vaguely Chinese-sounding bullshit instead of giving the goddamn characters actual names. Yeah.
When you tell me you're trying to get more mature and dignified in the aesthetics of Mortal freaking Kombat, I mean, okay, it's your game, you do you, but should I assume that also means that, like, the Tom and Jerry physics, the cross-cultural sensitivity, the every human body containing 800 gallons of blood under aerosol pressure, that's all going away too, right? Because otherwise, I'm not sure if mature is the word you're looking for here. Mortal Kombat is juvenile. Mortal Kombat is awesome, wonderful, stupid, sleazy garbage. If Mortal Kombat doesn't make you feel a little bit embarrassed to still be enjoying it past the age of 16, it's not doing its job right. So,
stood stalwart against the onset of satanic panic and motherly moral outrage in the 90s, and incidentally gave birth to the ESRB in the process. More to the fucking point, what does it say about our society that I can disembowel a dude and tear the tits off some slag in a fatality, but God forbid I fucking look at him while doing so? Ed Boon, you've become the Puritans you fought against in the 90s.
Despite their vast political and ideological differences, these two talking heads both kind of agree that Mortal Kombat's operating aesthetic is stupid schlock, and the big boobs kind of fit into that modus operandi of stupid, sleazy schlock. While they both have different reasons for opposing the censorship of obnoxious boobs, they both came to the innate conclusion of why stupid, busty kung fu girl designs were a part of the Mortal Kombat identity and iconography. And that's the issue. When you lose focus on what the core identity of what it is that you're making, you also lose focus on how you should be making it. It'd be like if in the middle of Frozen 2, Elsa was stopped from having a big musical number by a new side character who came to tell her that musical numbers are dumb and do little to help solve the world's economic inequality or stop world hunger. But the funny thing is, sometimes when you respect a property's core identity, you can still manage to appeal towards an audience that's not in your core demographic. And the best example I can think of this is My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Now, the interesting thing about Friendship is Magic reboot of MLP is how it managed to expand upon the core My Little Pony audience beyond just girls. When Lauren Faust was given the reins to remake the property from scratch, she doubled down on its girly qualities while also using a good old touch of Super Moe anime design to really pump up the cuteness of those horses, while also injecting a dose of fantasy and adventure. Not only did she appeal towards a new generation of girls, she also unintentionally brought in a huge contingent of anime-loving teenage boys and man-children who became die-hard pony aficionados. Amazing how far the power of Moe anime eyes can go, but the lesson to be learned here is that My Little Pony didn't attract a male audience by giving ponies laser blasters or retractable claws or forcing them to fight in a desolate post-apocalyptic future. It managed to expand on its audience by doubling down on the unique things that were true to its core raison d'etre, not by telling people that cute ponies are stupid. Despite this push, how successful has been making the Force female been and actually attracting a new female audience for Star Wars? Has there been a new generation of Star Wars fans created from people who previously couldn't care less about it? Let's find out. As of the time of this writing, I've been working at Yelp in their sales department, so let's ask around and see if any of these girls, the exact audience who Kathleen Kennedy and Disney at large have been trying to convert into Star Wars fans, have actually had their opinions changed and now like Star Wars. Have you seen any of the old Star Wars movies?
No. No. Nope. No. No. No.
Have you seen any of the new Disney-era Star Wars movies?
No. No. Yeah, I have.
Oh, which ones did you see?
I don't remember. No. Not interested.
Never been interested in them.
No.
Did any of the new female characters like Rey, Rose Tico, Admiral Holdo, Jyn Erso, or Kira make you more interested in seeing the new Star Wars movies?
No. I don't know who they are. No. Not sure who they are. Never heard of them in my life. No, but they sound interesting.
But not interesting enough to have you go see the movies?
They're too long.
No. I don't know, I've just never been into, like, outer space stuff.
No. I just don't care.
And it's about what you'd expect. These girls don't seem to give a shit that the Force is female, and like many of them in the past, didn't give a shit either. Not to say that there aren't girls who love Star Wars, and I'm sure Baby Yoda is going to bring in some more fans into the fold, but predominantly it's still seen as a boys' thing. And that's the issue. You kind of betrayed what Star Wars is at its core, and you have nothing to show for it. With Marvel, it's easier to expand the audience because there's so many different characters, and each can bring a different flavor to their respective franchise. Star Wars is a little bit more limited, but that doesn't mean that there aren't ways to channel other things through Star Wars. I think the best example is, of course, the success and praise that's been heaped onto The Mandalorian. The exceptionally fickle Star Wars fanbase seems to love it, and while I wouldn't say it's perfect, as I predicted before, the fact that it's an episodic serialized series that's being released over the course of several weeks has helped keep it relevant. People seem to be digging that every Friday there's a new adventure to go on with Mando and Baby Yoda. What new characters are you going to encounter? What kind of scrappy situation is he going to have to get out of using his flamethrower? Some episodes are more successful than others at channeling the Star Wars pulp vibe, with other episodes feeling a little too much like 90s Sci-Fi Channel TV shows. But I think The Mandalorian cuts to the original heart and spirit of Star Wars better than anything else in the Disney canon so far. It's those old Flash Gordon serials that George Lucas grew up watching, only writ on a larger scale for a new generation. The Mandalorian also largely tries to take inspiration from other media instead of just referencing Star Wars. Each episode is a little riff on some kind of genre movie, whether it's a Star Wars-themed retelling of The Seventh Samurai, or a classic western, or a heist movie. Hell, I'd say the genius of the series is that it's basically the classic manga Lone Wolf and Cub told through a Star Wars prism, and that's where The Mandalorian succeeds. It's focused on telling an adventure story as opposed to stopping midway to give a didactic political message about the war economy, or giving a very special message about the dangers of toxic masculinity. And the new era that comes after the rise of Skywalker will have to learn that lesson. Maybe Dave Filoni will finally get the promotion he deserves after toiling away in the CGI animation mines, and get to handle Star Wars on a larger scale after his success on The Mandalorian. Supposedly, Kevin Feige is going to be giving a helping hand to Lucasfilms. No idea how there are enough hours in the day for him to do that, in addition to overseeing all the Marvel film, TV, comics, and video games, but apparently that might happen. Though that's the key to saving Star Wars, embracing what it is without trying to turn it into something that it isn't. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. There was a long drought in December, but a lot of stuff came up, so hope this helped make up for it. I also have a super secret video that I made that I can't show anyone for a certain reason. I'm hoping that I'll be able to show it to you guys soon. But if you want to see it early, you can come to my Patreon. Yeah, woo! I have a Patreon now. I still haven't made my little official announcement trailer. I'll get to it eventually. but it's there. You can join the wonderful Joseph Malty, the single and only member of the Lobster Pod, if you want to help support me this year so I can continue to make content. So if I'm going to get to pro MLG, I'm going to need your help, so consider supporting to the Lobster Magnet Patreon. So thanks for watching. As always, share, click the like button, click that bell thingy that they keep on telling you to click that's supposedly important. And remember, lobsters and tennis, but don't you grab it.